Welcome to my 13 horrifically silly days of Halloween for 2022. Today, I have with me three children's literature guests, author Sue Schmitt and illustrator Luke Flowers and Mr. Monster, who you'll meet shortly. Welcome all. There he is. Welcome all.
Hi, thank you.
Joe, you're welcome. Yeah, it's great to have you here. And I would first like to hear a little bit of background information on you guys. So please, we'll start with Sue. Tell me about how you came to be an author for children's books.
Okay, well, it really started when I was 5 years old. I was being bullied by my big brother again, and he's a good guy now, no
Yeah.
worries. But I was hiding under a kitchen desk, and I pulled a chair in to protect myself from his flying fists.
Oh,
And
jeez.
at that moment, I had this aha moment that when I grow up, I'm going to write picture books and help all the little sisters not be bullied by their big brothers.
Mm.
And I think it was because I learned from reading so many picture books with my mom that picture books and the characters were allies that helped us navigate the way. And so I forgot about that dream. It was always in the background as I went on, grew up and went on with my career. I worked for a software game publisher, traveled the world, had this amazing time, but in my heart, what I really wanted to do still was write for children. So I quit my job and took my first children's book writing class. It was right around 2000, the year 2000. And I was told by my teacher the best thing I could do was join the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I took her advice. I joined. I learned about the craft. I learned about the creative side. I wrote a lot of really bad picture books. And then um, when was, I had a daughter who was around 10 months old and started a mommy group.
Mhm.
And all these moms came together. We lived in the canyon, in a canyon in Los Angeles. We were very isolated, came together. And within this group, kids started having diagnosis of leukemia, food allergies, um, epilepsy, different issues. And I started writing medically inspired books first. So my first book was even Superheroes Get Diabetes. And then I wrote The Princess and the Peanut, a royally allergic fairy tale. And I've written 7 books in total. And I recently got my degree from the Vermont College of Fine Arts in Writing for Children and Young Adults.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Wow. Amazing. Now, Luke, tell me about how you came to be an illustrator.
Yeah, I mean, when I grew up on a farm and in a really small little town here in Colorado called Buena Vista, and so I think just not having a lot to do other than a ton of chores and taking care of farm stuff, that was sort of my escape, just to take a sketchbook down to the barn, draw the animals, or just sit in my room and just draw pictures. And I think that just kind of led to it really opened up just a whole nother world. We didn't really have like really big bookstores in that town or anything, so we just had this really small public library. But I would just check out every children's book they had, and just kind of study them. And just growing up in such a neat age during the 80s, there were so many imaginative characters. And so I think there's just a lot of that, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. But just really inspired by where you could just go into these worlds, and it just seemed just you could check out 100 books a week and there'd still be more. And so I think I just really thought that would be so fun to be able to be part of that storytelling. And you're watching Sesame Street, and then I got into the Muppets, and it just seemed like there was just all these worlds available now, that there was so many different avenues to be an artist and a storyteller. And so for me, it just kind of kept leading to wanting to be a storyteller of some kind. I didn't really know what kind of artist I would be. I kind of wanted to be a puppeteer, maybe a painter, maybe a cartoonist. And you tried a little bit of everything. And then I went to art school after high school, Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design up here in Denver. And then from there, just really started to hone those illustration skills. I worked at a creative studio for about 10 years, just kind of doing design and doing illustration on the side, just because I knew you had to kind of build that portfolio. And so I just sort of started to build that portfolio on the side, doing some editorial work for children's magazines, and then kind of got my first big break with Random House doing a little series for the Smithsonian, and then Scholastic had me pick up or illustrate and write a book series, and that really started to take off. And from there, 70 books later, here we are.
Wow. Awesome. And can we meet Mr. Monster?
Yes, and
Hear a
yeah,
little-
speaking of puppet,
Yeah.
hello everybody. Wonderful to
Hi,
see you.
Monster.
Hello, Monster. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I have lots of friends. I'm probably the most popular in the neighborhood. That's the word on the street. I'm hoping to have more adventures, if Sue and Luke can get to work. We're working.
Yeah, sorry, I've been busy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Monster.
I'm
Looking
sure they'll
forward
get
to-
on that though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Favorite time of the year coming up. Oh, it's the most brilliant time of the year.
It absolutely is, and everybody here certainly believes that. All right, now I would like to hear from each of you. We'll start with Sue. Could you tell me about that monster on the block? Like, what's it about in a nutshell? And we can later talk about when it was published and who published it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Monster's neighbor vampire has sold his house. It's a very spooky house. Monster's favorite on the block. And Monster gazes out at it and is wondering who might move in. Could it be a dastardly dragon or a greedy goblin or an ogre with a mucky, murky swamp? It turns out to be none of those. It's someone more creepy than Monster could have ever imagined. Monster, do you want to reveal it?
It turns out to be a clown, a cartwheeling clown.
I don't like this guy.
Oh,
Oh,
wow. That
Yes,
is definitely a scary neighbor for many.
terrifying, terrifying. So honestly, so terrifying that when I got the offer from our publisher, they said, can we make it not be a clown? And I said, no, it needs to be a clown. So anyway, yeah, so Monster riles up the neighbors and they all figure out what it's like to learn, what it's like to live on the block with someone so different from themselves.
Mhm. Excellent. So diversity, all that good stuff.
Yes, definitely. Tolerance, diversity, inclusion,
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome
and
stuff.
friendship.
Yeah.
Sorry?
And friendship.
Friendship. Absolutely. Luke, tell me a little bit about your experience illustrating that monster on the block.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up just if I could draw anything all day, it'd be monsters. I mean, I had just how to draw. I think it was the Ed Emberley book that was like how to draw weirdos that first got me into just like drawing weird creatures and monsters and and then I found like Scholastic had this whole like how to draw 50 monsters, and so I was like how to draw Dracula, Frankenstein. So I think for me it's always been that. And then like I was mentioning, I mean, you start to get into the world of like the Muppets. It's all monsters and crazy characters and and then just Scooby-Doo was like one of my favorite cartoons, of course, just Monster Central. So for me, I think I just absolutely loved monsters growing up. I mean, as you can see behind me, I've just got monster toys for days that I've just collected since I was a kid. And if there's any book I've ever wanted to do, it was monsters. So when they came to me to work on them with Sue, it was just, I mean, I'd been waiting to do a monster book forever, and it was just so cleverly written and just to be able to kind of take that whimsical spin on the classic monsters, like Frankenstein, Drac, and just a mummy and zombies, and so that was really fun just to kind of do that little spin and then start to create that world around them, what the neighborhood was like, and I just love that Sue kind of thought about that. Like you see, it's not anything different than we've seen in a lot of these shows, spooky house and stuff, but just kind of trying to make it a little bit more like just every day, like what would their everyday lives and houses look like. So that's pretty much my favorite part, is just coming up with adaptations of characters.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, Mr. Monster, can you tell me what it was like meeting that clown?
Oh, at first it was just terrible. I didn't want to even say hello. But,
Oh, nobody
everyone
got
else.
better?
Yeah, I think everyone else made friends quickly. Oh, I'm a little slow to become friendly. I've been burned too many times.
Oh boy. Well, burned too many times by whom?
Well, when Drac left, there goes the neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah. All right, awesome. But eventually you came around.
You know,
Yeah, yeah. Good, good, good. And it was a learning opportunity for you.
yes, it was a change of heart, really.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent. And definitely a good lesson for all the kids out there, and their parents too. So when was it published, Sue? And by whom?
So it was published by Two Lions Amazon in 2020 in the middle of COVID. And
Mm.
since that time, it's been ranked #1 on children's books on, thank you, on prejudice and racism. And it's won about 8 book awards, including some for humor and for Luke's amazing illustrations.
Awesome. So if you could both tell me, Luke, you've already gone into this a bit, so you might have a shorter answer. But Sue, what is special about creating a children's book about monsters in particular?
I love how it connects to my love of silly monsters, like the ones from the Munsters and the
Mhm.
Addams Family shows I devoured as children. As a child, my brothers and I used to love those shows. And like you, I also adore Halloween. So it is so fun to bring forth these iconic Halloween characters. And I love that monster is transformed by kindness.
Yeah,
And so I think there's a little monster in all of us, and I think it's great for children to see that too.
yeah.
And I can't tell you, the day that I found out that Luke was going to be the illustrator, was better than my birthday and Halloween together.
I bet. Absolutely.
Yeah, we had met on Twitter where I had wondered if I was just wasting all my creative time, but Luke and I connected. I checked out his artwork, saw all of his monsters, and as soon as I sold the manuscript, I knew that he was going to be the best person for this book.
Thanks.
Wow. You actually have had a similar experience to me and one of my illustrators, whom I also met on Twitter,
Oh,
Gordon
really?
Bagshaw, who did Libby, the Libby Joanna picture book, but he's actually also working on Peter Littlewing, my first middle grade novel coming out next
Oh,
year, early 2020.
Congratulations.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
And yeah, it's so wonderful to find a brilliant, sensitive artist, is it not?
It is. The hardest part though is that you don't get to collaborate at all. Like Luke and I did not speak till as you know, I'm sure, until the book was done. And then I
Mhm.
was so excited to be able to get to talk to him about it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, as I said, Luke, you already covered some of this ground. I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to say about creating a picture book with monsters.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I was just mentioning, I feel so grateful for the time that I grew up and just the exposure to such great storytelling. And, and I think that was the neat part was just realizing, I grew up with a lot of watching the old reruns of classic horror monsters and all those. And, at that time, they weren't quite as scary anymore, but at the time they were frightening when they first came out, of course. And so in the 80s, I mean, I was like terrified by a lot of the like current horror at the time, but then later you kind of watch them again, you realize it's not so scary. So I love that, like starting to get into like realizing how fun the monsters could be, through storytelling. From just the world of Tim Burton, I think was probably one of the biggest things, other than Jim Henson's monsters, that really made me just love the idea that you can tell scary stories and it doesn't have to be like terrifying. It can actually have some really fun messages to it. So again, I just love that that's how Sue kind of took it. It wasn't your typical monster story.
So was that the best is that the best part about illustrating monsters? That twist.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, of course, there's, I've had other opportunities to just work on a lot of really great characters and books. But again, like I was saying, if getting to just work with anything that has to do with monsters and that kind of imaginative world and add your own twist, I think that's the fun challenge I had with it. Is like, how do you make, a monster that people kind of recognize as like, oh, that's kind of the Frankenstein one, and but make them a little more handsome, Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you. And again, just even like I now do like some character design classes with kids, and just talking about like how do you make something that you might already recognize and make it your own. And so that's kind of a fun challenge when it comes
Right.
to something that a lot of people recognize, like monsters, and then thinking up your own kind of spin.
Right. Right. Well, Sue, you've already talked about what inspired you to write this kind of story. Do you have anything more to add about specifically about your inspiration?
Yeah, so in 2016, I went to graduate school for my master's degree in writing, and we had these crazy deadlines with packets due just about every month of 40 creative pages and a couple of critical essays. And it was almost packet time, and I still needed a few more pages. So I decided I needed to quickly pull together a picture book for that packet. And so I keep a list on Evernote. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but it's sort of like it can be used sort of like notes for people who use that on Mac. Where I have a running list and I call it 365 picture books. And I just will, when something comes, inspires me in the day related to a picture book, a character, a line, anything, I'll just jot it down in that list. And so I grabbed my list knowing I had like a day to write a picture book and started scanning down it. And I came upon a line which was Settle Down Clown, which was going to be a clown trying to put its clown child to bed. Um, and all the antics the child clown goes through. But in this case, I also had heavy on my mind the difficult climate of hate speech following the 2016 election. And so I was thinking of monsters and clowns, and they sort of came together. And it was probably one of the fastest stories that I wrote and sold with the least amount of editing.
Wow.
Yeah, so sometimes things just fall into place, and other times I will edit a story for 2 years. So this monster really wanted to be brought to life by Dr. Luke Frankenstein, I think.
Excellent. Very cool. Okay. So, where can young readers and their parents find that monster on the block?
So they can find it on Amazon. That's
Mhm.
one of the best places because the publisher is Two Lions Amazon. So you could probably get the best price there. But you could also look for it on bookshop.org and I think indiebound.org, as well as your local library.
Terrific. Fantastic. Would you mind telling me about those awards actually?
Yeah, so the the first one that we got was the Northern Lights Book Award for Humor in 2020.
Nice.
And the one of the more recent ones, I guess won the Hindi's Females of Fiction Literary Award, but Luke won it too because it was also based on his illustrations.
Wow.
So that came out in 2021. We've won a few Firebird Book Awards for children's illustration, children's humor, children's picture books ages 4 to 8, and we won an award from them for juvenile fiction as well.
Nice.
And we also won one for the Royal Dragonfly Book Award in
Yes.
2021.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll start with Luke, because you've been quiet there for a little while. I've been piling on to Sue
No,
there.
I'm just
Tell
enjoying.
me, yeah, tell me about some of your other books and projects that you've been up to.
Yeah, so let's see. This year coming out is Unicorn Christmas, which
No.
is in the series of Unicorn Day, Unicorn Night, which I illustrate for Diana Murray's amazing series. So yeah, Unicorn Christmas, that comes out October 4th. And then another fun one that's kind of one of those childhood favorites that I grew up loving was Star Trek. And so they just had me do Trek the Halls, which is like a Christmas adaptation for Star Trek fans.
Very cool.
So I love doing that one. That was fun because I mean I grew up on Star Trek as well, watching with my parents, and that one comes out October 11th. It was written by Ron Perlman, and it's with Little Brown. And And then, currently just working on actually 3 more books with Diana Murray. So we've kind of got a lot. There's one I'm currently working on and 2 more in the works. And then plus just trying to work on my own kind of author illustrator book pitches. So that's
Okay,
sort of
cool.
the year ahead. But yeah, I'm excited about it. Oh, and then a second in the graphic novel series that I've been doing with Emma, and it's called Sparkle Dragons. But
Oh,
it's really
nice.
fun.
Dragons are awesome.
Yeah.
And okay, so you mentioned you're working on your own project, author illustrator project.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've illustrated almost 70 books for other people at this point. The Moby Shinobi series was the only one I've actually written and illustrated. We did 8 in that series, but I've just, I've loved illustrating for other people, but I just have a lot of stories, kind of like Sue was saying. I've just got
Yeah,
this kind of list that's always growing, and I'm always kind of having to put it on the back burner because I'm busy doing all these other books, which I absolutely love, but it just felt like start kind of moving towards making more time to kind of tell some of my own stories.
absolutely. Are you able to tell us a little bit about what you have coming?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm focusing on like some board books and then some series books, kind of like the Moby Shinobi. I really love, growing up, I just loved series, anything with a series to it, just that you could get into and just kind of keep seeing how these characters grow. And um, yeah, so those are kind of the main focuses. Again, mostly just kind of imaginative characters. But yeah, I'm excited about it. Hopefully, they find a home somewhere
Oh yeah,
the next year.
absolutely. And Sue, what have you got? What else have you got going on coming down the pipe and that you've done separately?
Yeah, so in grad school, they encouraged us to work across, I went in to study picture books, but they encouraged us to work across all genres. So I wrote just about everything from from poetry for kids to YA. I thought I was just a picture book author. So I have about a couple of dozen other projects that I started. They're in various stages, and so I'm going back to those. And I've been spending a lot of time developing three of my projects, including Monster with Luke. We're developing those into TV pitches. I'm working with a producer who's getting those out to the studio. So that's super exciting. And the other thing I'm excited about is my next book is out in 2024, and it has a really long title. It's called Skybound, starring Mary Myers as Carlotta,
Ooh,
daredevil aeronaut and scientist. And it's illustrated by Iacopo Bruno. And that is about a forgotten woman from history who was a balloon aeronaut in the 1800s. She was like Amelia Earhart, the Amelia Earhart of her time. And so I cannot wait for that one to come out. It's because it's my first picture book biography.
very cool.
Oh, that's gonna be awesome. I love the title.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
it's hard to remember. So I'll probably just call it Skybound.
It's good that it can be shortened like that, but I love the
Yeah.
long title too. Fantastic. All right. So I will now turn to the questions that I like to ask all of my interviewees on the 13 horrifically silly days of Halloween. So I'll start with you, Luke. What is your favorite Halloween or spooky book of all time?
Probably of all time. It was like a little series called Gus the Friendly Ghost. I don't know if you've
Oh,
ever seen that. Who was it by? Jane. It was like Jane Thayer and the illustration. I can't. I had it written down somewhere. Seymour Fleischman. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they went on. It was kind of like a series, but it was about a little ghost that moved into this house with this mouse, and it was just the illustrations is what kind of brought me into it. But then, again, it kind of was a series. I'm sure they started out just as a one book, and then it became these funny. one of the funny ones is which they later retitled as Gus Goes to School, which was originally when I had first read it was called Gus was a real dumb ghost, and so, so had to change that one later in life. So I'm not sure when they republished it. I just later found a copy that was called Gus Goes to School. But yeah, they're super just awesome illustrations and really funny. Another one that was really fun is He Like Goes. There's what was the title of that one? the gorgeous ghost, and he like learns about self-expression, and I love that one because it's like he's a little painter and he's trying to figure out, can I be a ghost in just a white sheet, or can I change it up, and can I have a really fancy sheet? So it was like those stories when I was a kid, loving that, like, man, there's you can have a little bit of message in with just some really fun story about a spooky ghost. So again, tying back to what Sue did, I love when it's a great story and then there's maybe a little bit of heart to it, a little lesson that you can pull from it. So yeah.
Right, right. Okay, Sue, same question. Favorite Halloween or spooky book of all time?
Okay, so there was a book that I loved as a kid, and all I remembered was that there were these magical brownies, and you would get some sort of powers if you ate one, even more if you ate two, and something terrible happened if you ate three. And I recently, with very little information, Googled it and found it. And this is the book. It's called, let's see, there we go. No
There
Such Thing as a Witch by Ruth
Oh,
Chu.
oh,
And it turns out it's about a witch or a woman who moves in next door, and it turns out that she's a witch, and the kids go and visit her, and she gives them some brownies, and then the protagonist starts trying to sneak brownies and eat them, and she eventually turns into a mouse and has to figure out how to turn back into a regular kid. But the thing is that when you write uh, children's books, you often have to get the parents out of the way for the kids to have an adventure. But when I read this, I realized the parents were just cool with their kids going to the woman's house next door that everyone thought was maybe a witch, and she was giving them brownies. And it's funny how what feels comfortable in one era doesn't
Mm.
necessarily feel so comfortable in another.
right.
But yeah, I was so happy to find that book and read it again.
Oh
Uh,
wow, that's
Very
awesome. I'd love
cool.
to check
Does
that out.
Mr. Monster have a favorite Halloween book?
Hmm. Probably The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh,
That's probably my second favorite.
that's a good
We
one.
read that together all the time.
Fantastic.
Luke, I think you need to read him the monster at the end of the book if you haven't yet.
Yes, that was actually, I didn't mention that earlier, but that's probably one of the earliest books I remember reading, mostly because it was Sesame Street, but and actually realizing that, like, wow, you can actually interact with this book. And I mean, since then I've gone on to just be obsessed with little golden books. But yeah, that was definitely one that, I mean, it wasn't scary. That's what I loved about it. But man, it's
Mm.
such a clever story. That's why it's gone on to be just so legendary. But that is a classic.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites as well.
Okay, cool. Well, Sue, what is your favorite Halloween or spooky movie?
I can't say that I have just one, but
You
okay,
can say more
as
than
a my heart will always be with It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown,
oh,
because
yes.
I was so hugely influenced by the Peanuts and Charles Schultz. Um, More recently, it's a toss-up between The Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline. And then The Sixth Sense, like that's for me, that's one of my all-time favorites of kind of eerie, spooky
A
movies for
very good
adults.
twist,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
before M. Night Shyamalan's twists started becoming a regular thing. We weren't used to them yet. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not often surprised, but that one knocked me off my feet. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay, Luke, favorite
I
Halloween
mean,
or spooky
like,
movie?
so it's like hard to choose one, but like with our family, we usually do like what we call like stop mo Halloween, and so we
Oh,
just kind of watch like five. Oh well, I guess it's like seven now. Like just
okay.
great stop motion Halloween. So like started with like the Mad Monster party, which is like just classic, Ring of Mass, and then we watched Coraline, and then Corpse Bride, Frankenweenie. What's the next one in the series? And then Oh, Curse of the Were Rabbit, which is like a Wallace and Gromit one, and then Paranorman, which if you've ever seen that one, which is
Yep.
great, and then we end with Nightmare Before Christmas. But yeah, I mean, just because it's like just so fun. I love stop motion animation. I mean, if that was one thing I could have ever gotten into, but it's just I have no time for that. But for patience, I guess.
And
And
it
then the people that
requires a
make
lot
it,
of time and patience for
yeah,
sure.
it's such a beautiful art form. So I'm glad they still make so many in that style.
Me too. And I guess Tim Burton to thank for a lot of that anyway, not all of it, but yeah, certainly a lot. And Mr. Monster, The Nightmare Before Christmas, also your favorite movie?
Yeah, I don't know. What would be your favorite? Hmm. Yeah, I guess those are pretty good. Mostly the Tim Burton films. Beetlejuice. Yeah, that's a classic.
Yes.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
And Edward Scissorhands.
Yes.
Yeah, if we're not watching stop motion, we're usually watching Tim Burton during Halloween. So
Yes. Well,
there's
it's
no
all
shortage. I mean, that's what's so great. There's just no shortage. And yeah,
that particular stylized almost seems like live action in a stop motion set somehow,
yeah,
or even an animated set.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that he always like Tim Burton always kind of brought some of that into the other ones, with like the sand worms and even like Large Marge and Pee Wee Herman. I remember when I first saw that and I was like, what just happened? And then you kind of slow it down and you realize like Large Marge, and Pee Wee Herman's just like this stop motion character, but it happens so fast. You think that lady's face just completely morphed.
Yeah. Right.
That's the
Right.
magic of Burton.
There's a little bit of humor in this, I think, but it's a little eerie, and it puts me in some peril possibly to tell it, but I will be brave. Okay, when my husband and I got married, he had never had a dog, and we decided to get one. And he's very logical and science minded, engineering minded, and so he starts researching. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You don't research a dog. You find a dog and the dog finds you. And so that came to be. Our local vet called us one day. We had said we were interested in a dog, and she said, I've got one. His owner just died, and his owner's greatest concern was that his dog would find a good home. And so we rushed down there, and there was this beautiful Irish setter. And my husband took the dog for a little walk. And then I look over, and they're running almost like those commercials where the two people in love are running toward each other. Like, it was love at first sight for him. And so Ed's dog, Ed was the owner. Ed's dog was definitely in good hands, and we adored that dog. He was supposed to be a bird dog, but he was not. He never seemed like a very good bird dog. He would try to catch them, but gratefully never really did, except this one time. And here's where it gets a little spooky.
Hmm.
So we are at the Santa Monica 3rd Street Promenade one day, and our dog sees a bird. He doesn't quite go after it, but he's cornered it, and he opens his mouth, and it accidentally flies in there, and he's actually caught a bird. And so then some time goes by, and our dog suddenly has started to I'll get back to that in a minute. Our dog has started taken to whining at dinner, and my husband gets really annoyed with him, and he gives him one night this very strong verbal reprimand, and he's holding his fork, and he's giving the dog a talking to. And clearly Shane the dog felt bad. I felt bad. And I told my husband, I thought it sounded a little bit harsh. And I look at him, and the tines on his fork are completely bent over. And I said, see, Ed doesn't like you giving his dog a hard time. And so then time goes on, and we sadly lose our dog. We've mourned the loss of him. He dies from cancer, and we're finally over him. We're traveling in Germany on the Autobahn, driving very fast in a small Mini Cooper, and we start reminiscing about him and what a terrible bird dog he was. And the only time he caught a bird was when it accidentally flew into his mouth. And all of a sudden, splat, there are pigeon guts and feathers all over our car window. And we just stopped for a minute, look at each other, and I said, Ed does not like us making fun of his dog. And
Oh,
so
wow.
we don't speak of it for many years. We have kids. Now my husband's driving his VW van again. We're talking to the kids. Something comes up about our old beloved dog. And we start telling them the story about the fork, and how Shane was not a very good bird dog, and the splatting pigeon on the car. And for a second time, splat, pigeon guts and feathers all over our car. And my husband just looked at me and said, we will never speak of this again. And we have never told that story, especially while driving again.
Ow, yes, I was just about to say, there's no driving here, so hopefully we're
I-
reasonably safe for now.
Yeah, I'm looking behind me at the window. I mean, this is the first time I've
The
told the
windows.
story since then because, I don't want any more pigeons being tossed
Oh.
at us.
No,
From it.
no. And there are many pigeons here in Toronto, so I'm hoping that they're okay out there. Great story. Luke,
That's
do you have
crazy.
anything?
I don't have anything crazier than that. I mean, growing up on a farm, there's always weird, creaky, scary noises coming. We used to sleep in the barn on Christmas night. And there was always just weird things like, the worst was like we had tons of barn cats, and of course there's mice everywhere. So and there's bats. So I mean, there's just constantly something flying over your head, cats walking across your face while you're sleeping. So it was always like terrifying, but also really fun and super cold. I lived in Colorado, so like we would just be frozen, and it was really just to see who could outlast the next person.
Right.
But yeah, that was always like terrifying as a kid, just sitting there in this pitch black barn, listening to all the noises, and so I think it was kind of like somewhat scary, but also kind of like thrilling. So yeah,
And
old
fun.
barns, bats, cats, and rats.
Neat, cool. And as an animal lover, I appreciate that too. Animal and spooky together. Now, the other thing that we or I tend to talk about a lot, and with my guests in general on my blog, are B movies, particularly horror. They usually tend to be in that genre, but they also spread into other genres as well. So I wanted to take a moment to ask if you guys have a favorite B movie. Luke?
Yeah, again, that's a hard one because I just grew up loving those kind of old retro ones, watching them with like my grandparents.
Yeah.
And I recently did that like horrors, ABCs of horror kind of thing, and that was really fun to get those back out and just kind of like watch them with my kids as well.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite that I still always love to watch is Plan 9, or yeah, Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah.
Just it's so weird. It's got Bela Lugosi, who's one of my all-time favorites. It's got Vampira making a little guest appearance. And of course it's by Ed Wood. So and then I love later that like Tim Burton did the like nod to that whole movie with kind of the making of sort of. So I mean, it just hits on all my favorites. Aliens, zombies, vampires. It's got it all,
It has got
and it
it all.
doesn't make any sense. Like it ends, and you're just
No.
like, what was that all about?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's its own kind of masterpiece. Okay, Sue.
Okay, this is sort of a parody on B movies, but it came out in 1978. I think it's got 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it is called The Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. And
Yes.
yeah, it's about tomato starters turning sentient and attacking humanity, trying to take us over. And for those of you who have not seen it, it may or may not involve ketchup at the end of the movie. And it's wonderfully awful.
Yeah, it's so quirky.
Yes, and wonderfully awful on purpose entirely for its own comic effect. So,
Yeah.
favorite of mine too. Now, last but not least, I want to ask you guys about your Halloween ritual. Luke, what is it you do or tend to do every Halloween?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we always go trick or treating with the kids. That's usually where it starts off, and then we get back, everybody's cold and ready to eat their candy. I mean, it's crazy because here in Colorado, it's like getting colder and colder every year. Like now we'll have snow on the ground, so you're super bundled up, ready to go home, have some movie time. So yeah, we usually finish by watching, Nightmare Before Christmas with our stop motion sort of marathon. And although the kids are getting older now, it's fun. They still kind of do some of that stuff. It's probably the last few years of trick or treating because they're all getting to almost teenage years for the last ones. So we'll have to start thinking of new traditions with them. But my wife also has a pie truck, so there's plenty of pie. We always have pie. So
What? She has a pie truck? Mom
yeah,
did not tell me that.
yeah, it's delicious.
I bet.
Yeah, her and her sister have like a pie truck called Gold Star Pies. They've had it for like 5 years, and yeah, it's dangerously good.
Yeah.
We have way too much pie around the house, but it's been fun. I mean, it's like just delicious pies, and they make such good, unique twists. And the fall time, they have the best kind of, in the summer it's like fruit pies and all that stuff. But my favorite is when like the pumpkin pies and pecan and all those quirky ones come around.
Cool. All right, Sue, your Halloween ritual?
Yeah, so my girls are now young adults, but we carry the strong spirit of Halloween in us all year long. So we cannot wait until it's fall. I try to hold off on Halloween decor until September 21st,
Okay.
as
Official
tempting as
start of
it is.
fall. Yeah.
And then I take a trip to my favorite store for seasonal decor, which is Home Goods, and I load up, bring it home. We get all the decorations up. We make cider, carve pumpkins, watch Coraline or Nightmare Before Christmas, and then 3 days later, we watch our pumpkin turn moldy from the California heat waves. And then we just get whole pumpkins and just leave them out that way after that. And we just moved, and my girls and I were just talking about dedicating a whole shed to just Halloween decor storage.
Ooh, yeah. Well, sounds like it would be useful to you guys. I assume you have lots.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just moved and did a big clean out, and I'm ready to start fresh with Halloween.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Mr. Monster, do you have any rituals of your own?
Well, I like to drop a little gift by all my neighbors. That's a little tradition that Clown started. So, everybody's favorite things. Brain cake for zombie. It's one of my specialties.
Mm,
Yeah, being with your friends,
yeah.
hanging with the homies.
Absolutely, what Halloween is all about. Well, thank you so much, Monster, Luke, Sue, for talking with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
That was so fun. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Monster.
Yeah. Oh, you too, Sue. See you again soon.